Hi everyone, so today our topic is all about antimicrobial agents and resistance. But today I will be focusing about the antimicrobial agents because the antimicrobial resistance will be discussed by Ms. Laika Monilida. So objectives: to understand the definitions, classes, and mechanism of antimicrobial agents. Next is to explain and define the types of antimicrobial agents. And lastly, to appreciate the value of antimicrobial agents to living and non-living organisms. So first, what is antimicrobial agents? Antimicrobial agents is an agent that kills microorganisms or stops their growth. Infections and diseases may be caused by different types of organisms, such as bacteria, fungi, and viruses in humans and animals. The drug used to prevent the pathogenicity of microorganisms is called an antimicrobial agent. When we say pathogenicity, it is the property of causing disease. In short, antimicrobial agents are the drug used to treat or prevent diseases caused by pathogens. And when we say pathogens, it is any organism that can produce diseases, viruses, fungi, and protozoa, or any other bacteria or worms. So there are classes of antimicrobial agents. First, let's start with antibiotics. It is also known as antibacterials. It prevent or treat infections caused by bacteria, such as UTI, tuberculosis, sexually transmitted infections, or STI. Second is the antivirals. It prevent or treat infections caused by viruses, such as cold, flu, chickenpox, COVID-19, or HIV. Next is antifungals. It prevent or treat infections caused by fungi, such as ringworm or athlete's foot. And lastly, the antiparasitic. It prevent or treat infections caused by parasites, such as malaria, threadworms, and head lice. So let's start with antibiotics. What is antibiotics? It is a drug that is used to inhibit the pathogenic activity of bacteria. It is called antibacterial drugs. Antibiotics use is encouraged because it is fairly harmless to human beings and animals. So antibiotics are medicines that fight bacterial infections in people and animals. Antibiotics are medications that destroy or slow down the growth of bacteria. I know you're very familiar with antibiotics because it is needed when we got infections or diseases, right? So let's proceed to the diseases that can be treated by antibiotics. So as you can see in the first photo, the UTI or urinary tract infection, the most common bacteria found to cause UTI is Escherichia coli or E. coli. UTI are common infection, especially to women. Why? Because bacteria often from the skin or rectum enter the urethra and infect the urinary tract. Next photo is tuberculosis. It is caused by a bacterium called Mycobacterium with another person through air. And next is STI or sexually transmitted infection, and there are some common bacteria in STI like chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis. And there are specific antibiotics that are effective in curing these infections. So who discovered antibiotics? The real transformation in antibacterial therapy took place with the discovery made by Alexander Fleming in 1929 of the natural antibiotic penicillin. Sir Alexander Fleming, a Scottish researcher, is credited with the discovery of penicillin in 1929. At the time, Fleming was experimenting with the influenza virus in the laboratory of the inoculation department at St. Mary's Hospital in London. After he had returned from a vacation while talking to a colleague, he noticed a zone around an invading fungus on an agar plate in which the bacteria did not grow. After isolating the mold and identifying it as belonging to the Penicillium genus, Fleming obtained an extract from the mold, naming its active agent called penicillin. He determined that penicillin had an antibacterial effect on staphylococci and other gram-positive pathogens. So how do antibiotics work? Antibiotics get rid of the bacteria by killing it, like penicillin. The other kind of bacteria inhibits the multiplying action of the bacteria. Example of this is tetracycline. So in short, there are two functions of antibiotics on how they work, either to kill the bacteria or to just inhibit their growth or to stop replicating and growing. So antibiotics are basically classified based on their chemical structure. Antibiotics with the same structural class will showcase similar properties of effectiveness, toxicity, and allergy potential. So there are types of antibiotics like penicillins. It is a medication used in the management and treatment of a wide range of infections. Are you familiar with amoxicillin? Diba it is an agent to cure wounds or infections? Amoxicillin, by the way, belongs to penicillin. Next is cephalosporin. It is a drug used in skin infections, meningitis, and other infections. Next is macrolides. It is a treatment of a typical community-acquired pneumonia, H. pylori, and acute urethritis. Next is fluoroquinolones. It is a therapy of respiratory and urinary tract infections, include ciprofloxacin. It is a medication for UTI also. Then levofloxacin and ofloxacin, which is for cellulitis and UTI. Next is sulfonamides for urinary tract infections. Tetracycline, it is used to treat pneumonia, respiratory tract infections, infections of skin, eye, genital, and urinary system, and certain infections that are spread by ticks, lice, mites, and infected animals. Next is aminoglycosides. Example of this are gentamicin for UTI also, and bacteremia and endocarditis. So based on how they work on stopping the infection of the bacteria, they can again be classified as bactericidal. When we say bactericidal, they kill the bacteria present in the body which causes disease. Bactericidal also inhibit the cell wall formation of the bacteria. Later, we will discuss about the mechanism of a certain antibiotics. So, for example of bactericidal is penicillin and polymyxin, aminoglycosides, and ofloxacin. So, I have discussed earlier what are these antibiotics. Next is bacteriostatic. When we say bacteriostatic, it is the medicine which are used to inhibit the growth of microbes, are known as bacteriostatic. It prevents the growth of bacteria, inhibit the DNA replication, and protein synthesis of bacteria. Example of this is chloramphenicol. Chloramphenicol, which is a medication for typhoid fever. So, for example, also is tetracycline, chloramphenicol, and erythromycin. So, on the basis of the range of action of antibiotics, they are divided as broad spectrum, narrow spectrum, and limited spectrum. When we say broad spectrum, it can be classified as drugs that destroy or inhibit the growth of a wide range of gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria. Again, broad spectrum is an act against a larger group of bacteria. For example of this is amoxicillin. So amoxicillin is used to treat number of bacterial infections. This includes strep throat, pneumonia, skin infections, and UTI. Next is the narrow spectrum. These types of medicines mainly attack gram-positive bacteria or gram-negative bacteria. So take note of their differences, okay? For example, if this is penicillin, Penicillin G is an injection used to treat and prevent certain infections caused by bacteria such as diphtheria, meningitis, gonorrhea, and syphilis. Take note, antibiotics such as penicillin G injection will not work for colds, flu, or the viral infection. So let us be all educated and mindful of what we take. It should be appropriate to our diseases or infections because antivirals are different from antibiotics. So now let's proceed to limited spectrum. It is effective against a specific kind of organism. Example of limited spectrum antibiotics is disidazirine. By the way, it is used to treat CDAD. When we say CDAD, it is Clostridium difficile associated diarrhea. So it is only for a limited or a specific type of bacteria. And now let's proceed to the mechanism of action of antibiotics. First, let's start with inhibitor of cell wall synthesis. Cell wall synthesis, which is the main target of antibiotics, is the cell wall, as you can see in the photo. Then the disruption of the cell membrane function, which is the main target, is the cell membrane. Next is the inhibition of nucleic acid, which is the main target of antibiotics, is the DNA of a bacterial cell. And next is the inhibition of protein synthesis, which is the main target, is the ribosomes. And lastly, the inhibition of metabolic pathways, which is the main target, is the folic acid. So I will discuss it one by one so that you could be able to understand well and absorb or grasp each mechanism of action of a certain antibiotics into a bacterial cell. So let's start with inhibitors of cell wall biosynthesis. Bacterial cells are surrounded by cell walls made of peptidoglycan. By the way, what is peptidoglycan biosynthesis? It is an essential to the integrity of the cell wall structure, and it is the outermost layer and the main component of the cell wall. By the way, peptidoglycan is a rigid envelope surrounding the cytoplasmic membrane of most bacterial cells or bacterial species. So we know that cell wall in the bacteria has peptidoglycan. So if the cell wall will be destroyed by antibiotics, the cell cannot be able to maintain its shape and bacteria will be killed. And that is the function of antibiotics towards the cell wall of a certain bacterial cell. By the way, mammalian cells do not have cell wall, so it is harmless to humans and animals. Then the inhibitors of membrane function, which is the main target, is the cell membrane. The bacterial membrane provides selective permeability for cellular homeostasis and metabolic energy transduction. And several antimicrobial agents interfere with multiple targets through the interaction of a lipophilic moiety with the bacterial membrane, leading to the destruction of membrane structures or membrane function. So, in bacterial and plant cells, a cell wall is attached to the plasma membrane on its outside surface. So the plasma membrane consists of a lipid bilayer that is semi-permeable. The plasma membrane in the bacterial cell or even the plant cell regulates the transport of materials entering and exiting the cell. So therefore, the cell membrane is important in bacterial cell. So the actions of antibiotics toward a bacterial cell in the cell membrane immediately kill or stops the growth of bacteria. Next is the inhibitors of protein synthesis. What is the protein synthesis? It is a complex, multi-step process involving many enzymes and conformation alignment. However, most antibiotics interfere with the 30S or 50S subunits of the 70S bacterial ribosome to block bacterial protein synthesis. Protein synthesis inhibitors is a compound that slows or stops the growth of proliferation of cells by disrupting the process that lead directly to the generation of new proteins. Bacterial cells needs protein in order to grow and survive. So, if antibiotics inhibit its protein synthesis, then the bacteria will stop from multiplying or replicating until they will die or they will be killed by antibiotics. Next is inhibitors of DNA. Antibiotics can inhibit replication, transcription, and folate synthesis of microorganisms. The quinolone drugs can interfere with DNA synthesis by inhibiting topoisomerase. Topoisomerase is an enzyme involved in DNA replication. And DNA synthesis occurs of chromosomes, which requires substrate primers and templates and enzymes. So different drugs were used in treating diseases by inhibiting DNA synthesis in different manners. So there are the fluoroquinolones. Fluoroquinolones are the group of antibiotics that are used in treating infections caused by gram-positive and gram-negative organisms. Next is the quinolone. It is an antibiotic interferes with the changes in DNA supercoiling by binding to topoisomerase 2 and 4. This leads to the formation of double-stranded DNA breaks and cell death. So next is the topoisomerase. It is an enzyme that can ferment the genome. So the quinolones increase the concentration of these enzymes, which result in causing cell death. And lastly, the metabolic pathways. So bacterial metabolism inhibitors are a class of antibiotics that target nucleic acid and amino acid synthesis. And tetrahydrofolic acid or TH4. It is a K coenzyme used to synthesize nucleic acids and certain amino acids in all life forms. Bacteria synthesis from the precursor para-aminobenzoic acid or PABA. So metabolism normally function in bacteria to generate energy. And the folic acid is synthesized by bacteria from the substrate para-aminobenzoic acid or what we call PABA. And all cells require folic acid for growth. And bacteria use folic acid in order to synthesize the nucleic acid that they make up their DNA. By the way, THD means tetrahydrofolate, while DHF means dihydrofolate. So now we are done with antibiotics, and now let's proceed to the second class of antimicrobial agents, which is the antiviral. Antiviral, as what I've said before, that antiviral is a treatment or a medication that is used to treat or cure diseases or infections caused by viruses. Antiviral agent is a drug which is used to stop the pathogenic action of a virus. It is called antiviral agents. So example of the viruses are cold, flu, chickenpox, COVID-19, or HIV. Antiviral is an agent that kills a virus or that suppresses its ability to replicate and hence inhibits its capability to multiply and reproduce. A viral is technically not alive, which makes it hard to kill. Further, viruses replicate or it make copies of themselves by hijacking the machinery of the cell they infect. So it is difficult to kill the virus without killing the cell. So aside from the vaccinations, there are also a tablet that can treat COVID-19, which is relevant now in our time. So how Pfizer's COVID-19 pill or Paxlovid works and is administered. Paxlovid consists of two pills taken together, namely nirmatrelvir and ritonavir. Nirmatrelvir prevents key proteins that the virus needs to make more copies of itself from functioning properly. It's taken in combination with ritonavir, which helps keep nirmatrelvir from being broken down before it has completed its job or its function. When studied in clinical trials, Paxlovid reduced COVID-19 related hospitalization by almost 90%. So as we can say that the Paxlovid is an effective antimicrobial agent when it comes to viruses, or it is an effective antiviral agent that is used to treat COVID-19, which is caused by viruses. So are you familiar with the term ART? ART means antiretroviral therapy. Antiretroviral therapy or ART is a daily use of combination of HIV medicines to treat HIV. ART saves lives but does not cure HIV. It only reduces the amount of the risk of HIV, and it only reduces the risk of HIV transmission between people, and it prevents also HIV from advancing to AIDS, and also it protects the immune system of a human that is affected by HIV. So since we are done with antiviral agent, so let's proceed now to antifungal agent, which is the third class of antimicrobial agents. So let's first understand what is antifungal. So now let's discuss antifungal. So antifungal drug is a drug that is used to prevent the fungal activity in the host. It is called an antifungal drug. Example of this antifungal drug is miconazole. As you can see in the photo, this is example of miconazole. So let's understand first what is fungi. Fungi, it is a fungal infection, also called mycosis, is a skin disease caused by a fungus. There are millions of species of fungi. They live in the dirt, on plants, on household surfaces, and on your skin. Sometimes they can lead to skin problems like rashes or bumps. So these are the example of diseases caused by fungi, which are the athlete's foot and the ringworm. So if you have the athlete's foot or ringworm, so you better buy antifungal drug named miconazole. So this is a effective drug to treat diseases that caused by fungi like athlete's foot and ringworm. So now we are done with antifungal, so let's proceed to antiparasitic. So what is antiparasitic drug? It is a drug that is used to prevent the growth of pathogenic parasites. Example of this is anthelmintics. I know that you are familiar with this. So by the way, what is anthelmintics? It is a group of antiparasitic drugs that expel parasitic worms and other internal parasites from the body by either stunning or killing them, and without causing significant damage to the host. So the parasites need a host in order to get food or in order to survive. For example of this is the parasites malaria, threadworm or in Bisaya bitok, and head lice or in Bisaya kuto. So these are the example of parasites that live in our body. So even though there is a parasites that live in our body, there are also antiparasitic drug that can treat them. So in malaria, the treatment or the medication that is used is hydroxychloroquine. So this is an effective agent for malaria.
And also, there are also an antiparasitic drug for the threadworm. It is mebendazole. It is an effective drug for the threadworm. So, for the head lice naman, the effective drug is ivermectin. So this is the antiparasitic that is used to treat head lice or kuto para mawala ang imong mga kuto. So this is a tablet. As you can see, it is 3 milligram tablet ivermectin. So to those who have head lice, so you better use ivermectin. Okay? So antimicrobials, a simple review or overview. Again, antimicrobials are medicines used to prevent and treat infections caused by microorganisms in humans, animals, and plants. And there are 4 classes of antimicrobials, which are antibiotics, antivirals, antifungals, and antiparasitics. So, again, what is antibiotics? It is also known as antibacterials. It prevent or treat infections caused by bacteria, such as cellulitis, urinary tract infection or UTI, tuberculosis, sexually transmitted infections or STIs like gonorrhea. So, next is antivirals. When we say antivirals, it prevent or treat infections caused by viruses, such as colds, flu, chickenpox, COVID-19, or HIV. So, take note that the antibiotics is different from antivirals. So, it doesn't mean that you have a common cold or you have a common flu, you need to take a antibiotic or you need to take penicillin. No, it is dangerous to your health because antibiotics is different from antiviral. So you better take an antiviral drug if you have a cold. Okay, understand? So, next is the antifungal. It prevent or treat infections caused by fungi, such as ringworm or athlete's foot. Next is antiparasitic. It prevent or treat infection caused by parasites, such as malaria, threadworm, and head lice. So, an antimicrobial drug works against only one type of organism. So, I hope that you understand about the 4 classes of antimicrobial agent. So now let's proceed to disinfectant and antiseptic. So, antiseptic and disinfectants are the chemical components which are used as antimicrobial agents. Antiseptics are applied to the injured tissues, cuts, and infected skin surfaces. Antiseptics are not prescribed to be taken orally. These are the example of antiseptic: the Dettol, iodine tincture, and boric acid. So let's discuss it one by one. Okay, so Dettol, it is a mixture of chlorhexidinol and terpineol. It is used to apply in the wounds. So it is used to apply in the wounds. It is effective for treatment in the wounds. So we have here also iodine tincture. Iodine tincture and iodoform, it has very good antiseptic properties. It is also for wounds gihapon. And next is boric acid. It is used as an antiseptic agent for the eyes. So for those who has an irritation in the eyes, then you better apply boric acid. Types of disinfectants. There are many different types of disinfectants for use on surfaces. They are usually made for a specific purpose and are meant to be used a certain way because they don't work equally well against all microbes. Most disinfectants don't kill bacterial spores. So by the way, what are the differences of antiseptic and disinfectant? When we see antiseptic, it is used in the living organism, such as humans, such in our skin. We use alcohol, we use Dettol, we use boric acid because we are living organism. But when we say disinfectant, it is used in non-living organisms, such as the floor, such as the table, the drainage system, or even water. So these are the examples of disinfectants. The alcohol. Alcohol, remember during our laboratory activity that we first disinfect our table or our equipment in order to avoid bacteria or to kill germs or to avoid contaminants. So that is the use of alcohol. It is an example of disinfectant. It is one of the example of antimicrobial agent that is useful and important. It is used as preservative in food, in paints and cosmetics. To improve the yield of fuels, it is used in petroleum and natural gas industries. It is also used in the manufacture of ink, so that is the use of formaldehyde. We have also here chlorine and chlorine compounds. Chlorine is used as bleach in the manufacture of paper and cloth. So chlorine is used in drinking water as well and the swimming pool water to kill harmful bacteria. And then we have here parasitic acid and hydrogen peroxide. Parasitic acid, it is used in food processing, beverage, and medical equipments. While hydrogen peroxide, it is used to disinfect drinking water. So that is the use of some of the disinfectants. So antiseptics are classified by their chemical structure. All of them kill or slow the growth of microbes on your skin. Some are better for specific purposes than others. And the several types of this are the ethyl alcohol and isopropyl alcohol. It is used to disinfect your skin before needle sticks and in hand sanitizer. This is very common for us, especially now the COVID-19 pandemic. We need first to disinfect, we need first to apply alcohol on our skin in order to kill harmful bacteria or viruses, right? And I recommend you buying or using 70% isopropyl alcohol. Why? Because it is far better at killing bacteria and viruses than 90% isopropyl alcohol. So 70% is better than 90% alcohol. Because the higher the concentration of alcohol, the less effective it is at killing germs or pathogens. Because it has more water, which helps it to dissolve more slowly, penetrate cells, and kill bacteria. It's because the added water content slows down the evaporation rate, which means the isopropyl alcohol has longer contact with the surface, increasing the effectiveness of killing the germs. So if you plan to buy an alcohol, you better choose 70% solution of isopropyl or ethyl alcohol than 99% or 90%. Okay? So, antiseptics are used also for a variety of reasons. Some of their most common uses are washing and sanitizing hands, of course, preventing infections in a minor wounds, disinfecting skin before surgery or other medical procedures, and disinfecting mucous membranes before a medical procedure. So, it is very important that we need antiseptic and disinfectant drugs for us to be a healthy person and for us to be free from any unwanted microorganism or unwanted bacteria that can that is pathogenic. You know what? Pathogenic, diba? It is a bacteria that cause diseases. So it is better to use this disinfectant and antiseptic. So our friendly reminder before we end our discussion, always wash your hands with soap and running water when hands are visibly dirty. If your hands are not visibly dirty, frequently clean them by using alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. Protect yourself and others from getting sick. Wash your hands after coughing or sneezing, when caring for the sick, before, during, and after you prepare food, before eating, after toilet use, when hands are visibly dirty, and after handling animals or animals' waste. So always remember that. So thank you for listening, and I hope that you learned a lot from our discussion for today, which is all about antimicrobial agents. So the antimicrobial resistance will be discussed by Miss Laika Molyanida. Thank you, everyone.